really changed the way that I think about music, I think.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, I feel like that is the missing link, right? With people that are doing it themselves, and like being able to see how a pro does it, like can expedite so many things, can like push you past all those like hurdles that you're like, okay, you make mistakes and you obviously learn from mistakes, but maybe you don't have to learn from as many mistakes if you can see someone else do it properly.
Totally. But I mean, you can spend 50 grand making a record, or you can spend like $300 on a Mix with the Masters subscription and kind of have that vantage point. That, I mean, we have access to so many of those people now and so many of those workflows, and I feel like I've probably learnt as much from watching Philippe Starr on Mix with the Masters talking about mixing Phoenix than I did from making my record. You know, like there are so many
amazing.
Yeah, we have access to all of that information now.
Yeah, love it. So my next question for you is, you do a lot of writings, collaborations. How do you find people to collaborate with? How do those sessions kind of work?
I mean, there's a really amazing community in Melbourne and in Australia, and I think that part of that is, at least for me, like, you know, we have a national youth broadcaster, Triple J, where there's kind of like independent music getting played on the radio all over the country, and then, you know, a lot of those bands that are getting played on Triple J get booked on the same festivals, and you just kind of like run into people all the time. I mean, I guess, you know, my band's doing all those festivals as well, and through that you just kind of meet people, and I think it, for the most part, it happens really organically for me, which is really nice. And I think it works for me because I love being in the studio with my friends, you know, like that's the best thing to do. And I find it, pretty rare that I'll get into the studio with someone for the first time, having never met them or not know anything about them, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's amazing. Most of the collaborations you're doing, are you like the de facto producer, or is it like a co-writing session? Like what would you say like those sessions are looking like?
Yeah, it really depends on the artist and what they're kind of bringing to it. Like some people that I work with don't really have or like want to have those skills, I guess. And, you know, they just kind of want someone to facilitate their songwriting. And then other times, you know, the other person in the room will be running the session on their computer, and I'm just kind of bouncing ideas back and forth and playing instruments and stuff like that. So yeah, it really depends on the artist, and I think that's something that keeps it really interesting as well.
Amazing. I want to talk a little more on the Australian scene. Like you were talking how it's like it's a pretty small scene, and you have to kind of do a lot of things to stay afloat. We were talking about this before we started recording. Do you mind, I guess, sharing that again for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think working in music in Australia, like, there's not that many big studios and there's not that many kind of jobs in that world. And I don't think the industry generally is moving in that way either. But for me, yeah, I feel like I'm spending most of my time in the studio with other people, and then, you know, kind of very slowly working on a record for myself at the same time, and touring with some other artists. And I mean, I kind of really love that, you know, my kind of day-to-day life is pretty different, and there's lots of different things to do. And I think it keeps it really interesting, and it keeps my skills up as well.
Yeah. I was telling you also how my, in Israel, it's also we're kind of like an island, like Australia, you know, just with borders instead of water. And like, so it's a small scene, and you have to do a lot of things to kind of stay afloat. Like I also play gigs occasionally. I'm mixing, I'm doing podcasts, like whatever, lots of little things to keep myself afloat, you know, and it works, but it's a hodgepodge, and it's hard to kind of like niche down, like, you know, people in LA and Nashville kind of do, you know, we kind of have to. But there is something nice about, you know, doing a lot of the things, you know?
Yeah, I think so. And especially working with a lot of different artists, I think that being able to do lots of different tasks makes you, like, I don't know, I don't feel like I'm often looking for work, you know? Like, I feel like I'll make a record with someone and they'll need someone then to play in their live band, or I'll do a show and the band that was supporting us is looking for someone to help them record, or like, you know, things just by virtue
organically,
of doing
spiral.
Yeah, and I think doing a lot of different music jobs kind of puts you in that world where you can just meet people organically and things can just kind of happen. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm not great at talking myself up. And I think I'm pretty hard on myself in terms of my skill set and the gap between where I'm at and where I'd like to be. And I think that if I was, doing that LA thing of taking meetings with labels and telling them about myself and what I can do, like I probably wouldn't get any work that way. So it's, yeah.
I'm the same way. I think it's maybe it's like that, good old Jewish guilt or whatever you want to call it.
Tell me about it.
Or anxiety. Yeah, totally. I don't understand how people have like the confidence to like, but what is great is that your reputation, speaks for itself, right? So like, your Spotify playlists or, whatever, the work you've done, presumably that's like the proof in the pudding for artists that want to work with you that like you're good at what you do and you do a certain thing,
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, doing a certain thing is something that I feel like I'm always navigating though, because
right. That's actually something I wanted to talk to you about. Is because you're doing a lot of different genres. Like it's all over the place genre-wise. The stuff you sent me, to listen to.
I think that's been really important to me because I mean, I guess I started producing on my own without really anyone teaching me how to do it, and I think that for the first few years, everything that I was making sounded the same, or not sounded the same, but it had a very distinct style because that was really the only thing that I knew how to make. And I think my solo project got quite known for that sound. And, a lot of the bands that we were touring with were making music that was kind of in that world as well. But being a producer for other people, like you don't really want to be, pushing that sound on artists if they don't want to be, or like, I feel like my job is to be facilitating the vision of whoever I'm working with rather than just like
totally
transplanting what my band sounds like onto other
your style,
things.
right? Yeah. Amazing. So how do productions usually work for you these days when you're working with other artists? Like how does the song start?
Well, I mean, at my studio, I've got a bunch of keyboards and guitars and drum machines and lots of kind of just analog bits and pieces that often serve as the starting points of ideas. And often it's just, plugging some things in and starting to play some chords or, an idea on a drum machine or something like that. Like I feel like I'm pretty reluctant to be the kind of person that shows up and plays an artist a folder of beats, like I find it way more interesting to start something from scratch with someone. And kind of also to like encourage the other person in the room to be playing instruments as much as I am, if not more. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm playing stuff, sometimes I'm just pressing record and listening and then just kind of stopping when there's a cool idea and then kind of building from that. Yeah, I mean, I'm working in Ableton Live and I'm trying to just record as much as I can so that we don't miss any cool ideas. And even just kind of have a big chunk of audio there that we can sample and use in other ways. Yeah.
Interesting. So when the artist leaves, do you like tinker at it for a while or do you kind of just like wait for them to come back in, listen together? Do you get your hands dirty in between without the artist or is it always like in a collaborative manner with the artist?
Very rarely. It's as collaborative as it can possibly be, given the other artists' maybe tour schedule or whatever else they're doing. But yeah, I feel like I kind of make a point of just, making a bounce at the end of the day and just having that to live with for a while rather than tinkering forever.
Yeah, I love what you said about like, I don't want to be the guy like pulling up those drum loops and stuff. I was literally just talking about this on another episode. Just the artist gets so bored, I think, when like you're like looking for like a loop.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that, I mean, maybe if you're kind of starting out and working with other people that are starting out, using those loops is okay and it can serve as a good starting point for ideas. But at a certain point, like most of the artists that I'm working with are going to release, if that song is good and it ends up coming out, people are going to hear it. It's going to get played on the radio. I don't want people to like hear stuff that I've worked on and just go, oh, I recognize that splice loop from like Oliver Power Tools version 2 or whatever, like, and I feel like I hear a lot of that everywhere. And I think that, I mean, I use that stuff all the time, but I chop it up or run it through guitar pedals or reverse it, or, like, I feel like, there's so much that's there that we can use, but I feel like if the pursuit is like making the artist sound the most like themselves, using stuff that everyone has access to that can make everything sound kind of the same is probably not the path.
Yeah, I love that. When it comes to your own music, how do songs begin for you? How do you write songs, and how part of the songwriting process is the DAW and the work there?
Everything's really centered around Ableton Live for me. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like when I write songs, I was thinking about this when you asked me before about writing with other people, like, I feel like I just kind of check out of my brain for a few hours and then come back and there's a song there. Like, I feel like if I knew how to write songs, this job would be really boring and all the music would be really boring. I feel like the best thing is getting to the end of a writing day and going, oh my God, we have this song. I don't know how we got here, but it's there. And it feels like it's such a special feeling to kind of start the day with a blank slate and end with 3 or 4 minutes of music that makes you feel a certain way. And I feel like if I felt like I knew how to do that, I don't know. I think like kind of trying to hold on to an aspect of mystery and luck and all of that stuff is quite integral to the stuff that I'm making. So I actually don't really know how else to answer that question.
Yeah, it sounds like you're entering some sort of like trance or going into the zone, as they say,
Yeah, and I think like I'm really terrible at overthinking everything. And I think that when I do that, the work is like when I sit down and I go, okay, I have to make something that sounds a certain way or sounds like me or whatever, I'm never as happy with the results as when I just kind of like set on the path and stumble across something. And I think that all the skills and refining different kind of production or mixing processes and all of that stuff is really just serving to like know what to do when you find something cool.
Yeah. I love that. That made me think about the movie that you did a song for, the Mitchells versus the Machines, which was really cool. That song's great. Like,
thank you.
Were you given a brief, or was it just a song that you wrote and they just took it?
We were given a brief kind of thematically, like we were told about what the movie was about and just asked to kind of respond to those themes. But I remember, that day, so that was a song I wrote with Alex Leahy and Sophie Payton, whose project's called Gordy. And that day, I think I just bought a modular rig, maybe the week before or something. And I had a few modules in that case, and the most recent one that I added that morning was like an IO module that just converted line level to the modular impedance and all of that stuff. And so I was just really fascinated by running drums out from the computer into the modular rig, and I'd kind of just been messing with, some kind of drum programming ideas before Alex and Soph rocked up. And I just had this drum loop that was running through the Strymon Magneto, which is like a tape delay with the spring reverb and some cool saturation features. And that was kind of just going. And then they came and Soph brought an acoustic guitar and kind of started messing around with some chords that responded to that drum part. And we were just kind of away without really thinking about it too much.
Right. So the brief was just like, this is the movie, but you actually just took your own journey creatively with it.
And I mean,
we're able to,
it was a brief, but it wasn't a sure thing that what we made would be the song in the movie. I think that was a brief that was circulated pretty widely.
That's amazing.
And we just kind of did the song. We spent a day on it. We sent it, and we found out like 9 months later that they were thinking about using it. And then from there on, it was just a process of working with them to finish it and get it kind of sounding like what they hoped it would sound like and what we hoped it would sound like. And yeah. And then it was in the movie. Yeah,
it's great. There's like a drum fill in there that reminds me of, I think it's the Cranberries.
Yeah.
Was that inspired by that original song, or was it just like